Few names in American history carry the weight of Martin Luther King Jr., not because of myth, but because of consequence. His words did not merely inspire, they altered the direction of a nation. Martin Luther King Jr. emerged at a moment when the United States was wrestling with its own contradictions. The country spoke of freedom and equality while enforcing segregation, disenfranchisement, and systemic discrimination. King did not invent that tension, he confronted it. Born in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, King grew up in a society where racial boundaries were rigid and enforced by law, but he was also raised in a household rooted in faith, education, and moral conviction. That foundation shaped not only what he believed, but how he believed change could occur. King's leadership was never built on anger alone. It was built on discipline. At the heart of his philosophy was nonviolent resistance. This was not passivity, it was strategy. King believed that nonviolence exposed injustice by forcing it into the open. When peaceful protesters were met with brutality, the moral contrast became undeniable. That contrast shifted public opinion and forced political action. The Montgomery Bus Boycott marked one of the first major tests of that philosophy. Sparked by Rosa Parks' arrest, the boycott lasted over a year. It was not dramatic in the cinematic sense, it was persistent. Ordinary people walked miles to work. They organized carpools. They endured harassment and intimidation. King emerged from that movement not as a celebrity, but as a leader capable of sustaining resolve under pressure. From there, the movement expanded. Birmingham, Selma, Washington. Each location represented not just geography, but escalation. Protesters faced arrests, violence, and surveillance. King himself was jailed multiple times. From one of those jail cells came a letter that remains one of the most important documents in American political thought. In it, King challenged the idea that justice could wait. He argued that delay was itself a form of injustice, that clarity defined his leadership. King understood that laws do not change hearts on their own, but hearts rarely change without pressure. His goal was not comfort, it was conscience. He spoke directly to those who wanted gradualism, who preferred calm over confrontation. He made the case that peace without justice was not peace at all. The March on Washington in 1963 remains one of the most remembered moments of his life. The I Have a Dream speech is often quoted but rarely contextualized. It was not a standalone performance. It was part of a sustained campaign for civil rights legislation. It was delivered not to inspire applause, but to demand accountability, and it worked. The Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act did not appear spontaneously. They were the result of sustained pressure, moral framing, and political courage. King's leadership helped force the nation to reconcile its ideals with its actions, at least in law. But his work did not stop there. As the movement evolved, King expanded his focus. He spoke openly about economic inequality, labor rights, and the moral cost of war. His opposition to the Vietnam War was controversial, even among allies. He understood that speaking out would cost him support, but he believed silence would cost more. That choice matters. It reminds us that King was not universally celebrated during his lifetime. He was criticized, monitored, misrepresented. His approval ratings dropped sharply in the years before his death. The reverence that surrounds him today did not protect him then. That reality complicates his legacy in important ways. Martin Luther King Jr. was not a symbol crafted for comfort. He was a leader who demanded transformation. His vision of justice was expansive. It required sacrifice, it required confrontation, and it required sustained commitment long after marches ended. His assassination in 1968 marked a national trauma. It ended a life, but it did not end a movement. The grief that followed was not just personal, it was civic. Cities burned, trust fractured, and the question of what comes next became unavoidable. In the decades since, King's words have been quoted in classrooms, speeches, and public ceremonies. But remembering him fully means engaging with the harder parts of his message, the parts about economic justice, about systemic inequality, about moral responsibility beyond slogans. King believed that justice was not self executing, it required action from ordinary people. That belief remains relevant. His legacy is not static. It is not confined to history books or annual observances. It lives in debates about voting rights, in conversations about protest, in questions about how change happens and who bears the cost. Martin Luther King Jr. did not promise easy solutions. He promised meaningful ones. He believed that love could be disciplined, that courage could be collective, and that moral clarity, sustained over time, could reshape institutions. That belief changed laws, it changed culture, and it continues to challenge us. Remembering Martin Luther King Jr. is not about nostalgia, it is about responsibility. Responsibility to understand the depth of his work, responsibility to recognize that progress is neither automatic nor permanent. His life reminds us that democracy requires participation, that justice requires pressure, and that leadership requires sacrifice. Martin Luther King Jr. did not simply dream of a better future, he worked toward it, knowing the cost, and that is why his legacy endures.